Hello, Assalamu alaikum, and good morning. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Continuing with the topic of autopsy, I will start lecture number 5 on the topic of autopsy protocol. First, we will discuss the principle of autopsy. It should be uniform and adequate. And to make it uniform and in a best possible way, same autopsy protocol is to be followed in every part of the world. Because of its legal implications, the protocol of autopsy is specific and very important. And before the start of work, there should be a written, valid authority addressed in the name of the doctor. So this is the most important document which gives authority to the medical officer or the doctor for the conduction of autopsy. And it should go, the conducting officer should go through all the documents carefully. That before start of work, you should go keenly into all the documents which you have received through police or various other means. Now, the autopsy should be adequate. It means when we say that autopsy, it should be adequate, a complete examination of the body is to be carried out. The effects of physical and chemical changes on the body are looked into. There is external and internal examination and collection of specimens if required for the subsequent examinations from the other labs. And those labs are the toxicological analysis, biological examination for the trace evidences like blood, semen, saliva, or any other biological material. Then histopathological examination to find out the disease process, and bacteriological examination for the pathogenesis of the disease. Then autopsy should be uniform. To make it uniform, there is a standard protocol which is to be observed. Now, first we talk about the death investigating system. Because in our country, the doctor who is conducting autopsy, he is not the part of death investigation. And as we very well know, that a visit to the scene of crime is most important for especially determining the cause of death and the manner of death. So we'll look into what are the death investigating systems which are prevalent in the world. The death investigation is a very difficult job, very sensitive, very delicate job. And the death investigation in our country, Pakistan, is under the section of 174 and 176 of the Criminal Procedure Code of PPC. And this investigation is done by the police or the magistrate, and doctor is not the part of that death investigation. Whereas in the developed world, this is done under a definitive medical legal system. So the death investigating system in the rest of the world, there are three basic systems: the medical examiner system, the coroner system, and the continental system. The medical examiner system, first we will discuss this. In medical examiner system, a medical examiner is a licensed physician in a state who is officially empowered, trained in pathology, that investigates death which occur under unusual or suspicious circumstances. And he is sometimes in somewhere, he is going to perform the post-mortem examination. And in some cases, jurisdictions to initiate the inquest, that he has been empowered also not only to investigate death, conduct autopsy, and to initiate the investigation. The types of death which are reportable to the system, they are determined by the federal, state, or the local laws. That means which deaths are to be reported to the medical examiner. Now the coroner system. This coroner system, coroner is an official, elected official in a jurisdiction who investigates sudden and unexpected deaths, who may not or may be a physician. That means he may or may not be a doctor. And there are coroner courts. He also presides. And this coroner system is prevalent in England and Wales. And these areas have been divided into coroner districts by the Lord Chancellor, and each district consists of an area or areas of one or more local authorities. And the relevant local authority, with the consent of the chief coroner and the Lord Chancellor, must appoint a senior coroner for the district. The history dates back to feudal England. There existed the office of the coroner before 10th century, and the coroner interpreted as crown of the king and assumed as judicial functions also. Acted as inquisitional judge, he was responsible for the investigation, interviewing, and making a judgment in the cause of death. And this was the most common system as far as determination of death and other legal and forensic issues related with the death. The third system is the continental system. This is prevalent in the rest of the Europe. The common and major differences is that there is no official comparable to the coroner or the medical examiner which exists to investigate or supervise the handling of the deaths in the community. And the interest is retained. This interest is retained by the executive and judicial officers of the law enforcement agencies. So most of the countries define the investigation of suspicious or the criminal death. Every citizen, they assume that every citizen has a statutory duty to inform the circumstances of death to the police. Whenever there are suspicious circumstances, it's responsibility of every citizen that he should inform to the police. And who are the initiators of the investigation? That means then police are the initiators of the investigation. And as an adjunct to this system, the medical legal experts who are specifically designated are there to assist the police in their investigation. So that means police on the complaint of a citizen investigates, and a doctor who is specifically designated for the conduction of autopsy, he will conduct the autopsy and assist the police in investigation. So what are the laws which are related with death investigation in our country, that is in Pakistan? There is section 174 of PPC in Criminal Procedure Code, and there is section 176 of PPC, and there are police rules for the conduction of autopsy. And the health department also issues instructions for the conduction of autopsy. So first we talk about the section 174, subsection 1, 2, and 3 of Criminal Procedure Code of PPC. Police to inquire on suicide, homicide, and accidental. And under section 174(1), the officer in charge of a police station or some other police officer specially empowered by the provincial government in that behalf on receiving the information that a person has committed suicide or has been killed by an other or killed by an animal or by machinery or by accident. So these are the situations which are to be reported to the police. Or has died under circumstances raising a reasonable suspicion that some other person has committed the offense. And that officer now shall immediately give intimation thereof to the nearest magistrate empowered to hold the inquest. That means there is an area magistrate who has been empowered by the government to order for the investigation, and that police officer, which is the area police officer, on receiving such information will inform the magistrate and get the instruction for the conduction of inquiry. And unless otherwise directed by any rule prescribed by the provincial government. That means any rule which prohibits or which empowers, they will be enforced. Or any general or special order of the district or the sub-divisional magistrate. These are the situations where the district magistrate can directly order on receiving the information of these circumstances to the police officer for the conduction of investigation. And he shall proceed to the place where the body of such a deceased person is. That police officer will proceed to that place where the death has occurred. And there, in the presence of two or more respectable inhabitants of the neighborhood, shall make an investigation and draw up a report of the apparent cause of death, prescribing such as wounds, fractures, bruises in layman terminology, or other marks of injury as may be found on the body. He will note down all the injuries in a layman's language because he is not a doctor, he is not a medical expert, but he will note down all the injuries on the body. And stating in what manner, by what weapon or instrument such marks have been inflicted. He will try to investigate, inquire about the weapon. Then the report shall be signed by the police officer and other persons, and by so many of them as concur therein. That means the respectable persons which are present, they will sign, and shall be forthwith forward to the district magistrate or the subdivisional magistrate. So, by completing the investigation, writing down the circumstances, injury, weapon, and after signing, he will dispatch the report to the magistrate. When there is any doubt regarding the cause of death, or when for any other reason the police officer considers that it should be expedient to do so, he shall subject such rules as the provincial government may prescribe in this behalf. Forward the body with a view of its being examined. That is, whenever he arrives at a conclusion that there is a suspicion or foul play regarding the cause of death, he will forward the body to the nearest autopsy center for examination. And he will forward to the nearest civil surgeon or any other qualified person or man that has been appointed in this behalf by the provincial government. So that is the authorized medical officer who are authorized by the government to conduct autopsy or the medical legal work. If the state of the weather and the distance admitting for its forwarding is without risk and putrefaction on the road, as would render such examination useless. That is, if the police thinks that the distance to the autopsy center is more and weather does not permit, and there is chances of the putrefaction, then he can order for the disposal of the body. The section 176 of the Criminal Procedure Code. This is the inquiry by the magistrate into the cause of death. Section 174 was the investigation by the police officer. And section 176 is the inquiry by the magistrate into the cause of death. And subsection 1 is when any person dies when in the custody of the police, the nearest magistrate empowered to hold inquest shall, and in any other case mentioned in the section 174, clauses A, B, and C of subsection, the magistrate may cause the body to be disinterred and examined. So he has the power to disinter the grave under this section 176. So whenever a death occurs in police custody, the magistrate will order investigation. Or whenever these circumstances are suspicious and body has been buried, he will order for the disinterment of the grave. So subsection 1 is any magistrate so empowered may hold an inquiry into the cause of death either instead of or in addition to the investigation held by the police officer. That means the police officer has conducted the investigation. He can independently inquire or he can order for the further inquiry. The investigation held by the police officer, and if so, he shall have all the powers in conducting it which he would have in holding an inquiry into an offense. So that means magistrate has all the powers. He can investigate independently, he can order police, and he can further investigate, order for the further investigation in this manner. The magistrate holding such an inquiry shall record the evidence taken by him in connection herein with in any manner hereinafter prescribed according to the circumstances of the case. So powers to disinter the corpse. This is under section 176. The magistrate has the power to disinter the corpse. Whenever such magistrate consider it is expedient to make an examination of the dead body of any person who has already interred in order to discover the cause of death. The police rules for the conduction of autopsy, they are also helpful. So the previous law, which in the previous slide, that is whenever the body has been buried in suspicious circumstances, the magistrate on receiving such information can order for the disinterment of the grave under section 176. So there are rules, police rules for the conduction of the autopsy, and there are health department who also issues instructions for the conduction of autopsy. So these are the laws and the rules which are prevalent in Pakistan for the conduction of autopsy, comparable with other systems which are prevalent in the rest of the world. So the summary of today's lecture is that we have started studying the protocol of autopsy and we have learned the principles of autopsy. That means it should be uniform and it should be adequate. Then we have learned the death investigating systems which are prevalent in the rest of the world, that is the medical examiner system, the coroner system and the Continental System. And we have learned in this lecture what are the comparable death investigating systems in Pakistan. And they are under section 174 of the Criminal Procedure Code and section 176 of Criminal Procedure Code. And there are also police rules and departmental health department instruction for the conduction of medical legal work. So thank you very much. This is all about the lecture number 5. Take care. Allah Hafiz.